Hi, welcome to the follow-up where we run down the week's top stories from the Daily Northwestern. I'm Editor-in-Chief Michelle Corriston, and with me today are Campus Editor Joseph Diebold and City Editor Patrick Svitek. Before we dive into analyzing the week's biggest stories, I wanted to take a moment to address probably what's on everyone's minds and very upsetting pieces of news. Two former students committed suicide, one on Saturday, one on Tuesday. Unfortunately, from the time that I've been an editor at the Daily, this is the fifth that our staff has had to cover, and it breaks our hearts every time. We're going to continue to be covering their lives and their deaths in the most respectful way possible, but our hearts go out to their families. So to start off the follow-up, let's go to the In Focus that ran this week by our staffer, Amy White. She did a really nice explainer of why tuition at Northwestern is so expensive and where different money goes into creating the Northwestern experience. Joseph, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I think we're all familiar as students with the fact that tuition just keeps going up. But certainly the university, I think, prides itself on being need blind in admissions, prides itself on sort of being a high tuition, high financial aid school. That's certainly the model that university officials talk about. And it does seem like Northwestern stacks up pretty closely with a lot of its peer schools in terms of sort of that price tag continuing to go up at this point near that $60,000 mark, but still sort of trying to offer as much financial aid as possible, use the endowment, keep the investments diversified, and certainly I think the university is trying to do the best it can for its students, although obviously lots of other financial concerns at play.
Yeah, I think the most salient point from that article was that all of the schools that are within sort of our peer institution bracket are about the same price, and Amy wrote about how part of that is influenced by the fact that different ranking systems incorporate the money spent into how they rank schools. So she said U.S. News and World Report includes you know what the school is expending per student, and that was really interesting to me. Obviously, there are tons of different ranking systems. We're always in different places. There's questions as to whether college rankings are even legitimate, but that brought up an interesting question for me. Patrick, what were your thoughts on the article?
Well, I was going to ask Joseph, doesn't President Shapiro study this stuff? What does he have to say about the price of Northwestern tuition or just college tuition in general?
Certainly, President Shapiro is sort of his field of study is economics, and specifically the economics of education. And he, I think, has been very vocal, perhaps the most vocal about any issue facing Northwestern, about the fact that he does obviously feel that the education that the university provides, that sort of elite upper level education, is worth the price tag that's going to come with. And sort of they're going to do the best they can to mitigate that for lower middle income students. But certainly he's published op-eds. He's spoken out about this. He does think that the Northwestern experience is sort of unrivaled.
Yeah, this is definitely his field. So he had a lot to say in the article, and if you haven't read it, pick it up. It was really thoroughly reported by Amy. Let's turn to the city for a moment. Patrick, what do you think was the biggest piece of news this week?
Well, one of the biggest pieces of news, I think, was seeing the gay marriage issue come to Evanston. Obviously, Illinois Governor Pat Quinn is scheduled to sign a bill making gay marriage legal in Illinois on November 20th. And a few days after it passed the Illinois General Assembly, Illinois Democrats were actually in Evanston for a Democratic Party of Evanston dinner that had already been scheduled, but ended up turning into a kind of victory lap for a lot of gay marriage advocates on the state level here in Illinois. And so we had people like U.S. Senator Dick Durbin there, Evanston Democrat Jan Schakowsky was there, and then you had three of the state lawmakers who were honored for their role in getting the gay marriage bill through the Illinois General Assembly. One of the sponsors was there as well, Greg Harris.
Yeah, it's really nice that the timing of that worked out for that event to be able to celebrate some good news. So moving back on campus, obviously Amy's In Focus talked about how much it costs to go to Northwestern once you're here, but we learned some interesting things about early admissions this week. Joseph, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it seems like every time Northwestern releases a new admission statistic, it's another record for the university. But they did announce how many applications they received for early decision for the class of 2018. It was up 14% over last year, about 2,700 applications. And one sort of interesting twist this year was that there were a lot of technical problems with the Common App. Northwestern ended up having to push the deadline for applications back a week, The director of undergraduate admissions, Christopher Watson, did say it's not going to affect what time the decisions come out. They'll be out by the second week of December like they are every year. But he sort of did hint when we spoke with him that maybe the university and schools around the country will sort of look to move on from the Common App given the troubles that it faced this year.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's something that isn't unique to Northwestern. I'm sure a lot of schools that are on the Common App will be evaluating that. I mean, this main student in Tyler's story as a source applying to Northwestern said that luckily for her, the Common App site would freeze, but all her information was saved. But she had a lot of friends who actually lost parts of their applications that they had to redo. That's it for this week. For more on the stories we talked about, visit dailynorthwestern.com.